what we got to talk about is the college football playoff as well, and where kind of Ole Miss is going to land on that stage. To the Vaught we go, where Ole Miss honored 34 seniors, including injured Trey Harris and Henry Parrish Jr., former Memphis Tiger Caden Prescorn, and of course the winningest QB in Ole Miss history, Jackson Dart. The young guys doing everything they could to send the seniors out with a win. Opening drive, Chris Paul had the interception. The Reds settled for a field goal. The Bulldogs come back. They get a score of their own. Michael Van Buren to Kevin Coleman around the outside. And then what they got to say, you got to risk it to get the biscuit in the Egg Bowl. Check out my guy, Ulysses Bentley, with the huge run.
Free do.
Talk about somebody who maybe should have been in the conversation for the running back room all year. 89 yards to the crib. He might have had something to say there. The Rebs hold the Bulldogs scoreless for the remainder of the game in the second half as Jackson Dart becomes the Ole Miss all-time passing yards leader, passing the legend,
Eli Manning.
Eli Manning. Thank you very much. I was waiting for you. I kind of served it up on a platter, but
10,213 yards.
10,213 yards.
You think Eli's upset, or is he? I know he congratulated him on social media. Do you think Eli's sitting there like, I thought that record would be forever mine? Because he's a competitive guy.
I think all these guys are competitive, but a lot of them will say that records are meant to be broken, right? Yeah. And I think that's the kind of the conversation you probably get into. And I think if you're Eli Manning, and I'm talking about that record in particular, you want somebody to come behind you and break your records, because that means that the program is being successful, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we have seen with Jackson Dart, is that he has elevated the program to heights that, not that they've never been seen before, but you bring in the program to a place of respectability that they haven't been in a long time.
Since the 60s. Yeah.
I mean, it's talking about national championship, sure.
Right. That was the goal heading into the season, was to make a run to the national championship, definitely make it into the college football playoffs, was Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart's goal, with the rest of the team too. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I think Jackson Dart, it's the same conversation I was having about Seth Hennigan.
Sure.
This is someone, even though this season has been a disappointment overall for Ole Miss with 3 losses, Jackson Dart, it's something that you need to do is just sit back and enjoy watching the greatness that is Jackson Dart. I mean, he was incredibly fun to watch, and you don't know who's going to be your quarterback next year for sure. And Ole Miss, I mean, man, for the entire time growing up here, it's just the quarterback roulette. You know, the quarterback's overhyped, coming in, putting up decent stats, and then blowing big games, you know, all the way back to Bo Wallace when I was in college. Yeah, so Jackson Dart is one of a kind, and you're not going to see someone like him again for a long time.
But what this Egg Bowl win does, Caleb, is put Ole Miss, or keep them rather, in the conversation for this college football playoff, because what they couldn't do was stub their toe, right, against you're looking at me crazy because I know what you're about to say. But against Mississippi State.
3%.
But what we talked about a couple of weeks ago was, hey, they got to win out. They got to beat Florida. They got to beat Mississippi State. They got one of two, and now they're sitting 15th in the AP poll.
Those Gators going to chomp in the swamp, Avery.
They did get the chomp in the swamp.
Always going to chomp in the swamp. And that's the loss that really sets them back and puts them on the bubble for the college football playoff. What we're really looking at, Avery, is South Carolina and Alabama and Ole Miss SEC teams sitting on the bubble, because the SEC is going to have Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee in. And so will they get that 4th team, Avery, with 3 losses? That is the question. And so what I want to ask you is, do Ole Miss make it in? Or who out of Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss, if any of them get in, who do you think is going to get in?
Based on what we're looking at right here, this is 9 through 16, and what we know is that the college football, the AP poll does not necessarily match what the college football playoff poll is going to be. I think the argument can be made for any of these teams. I think if we are going to really put one in, it probably is Alabama. To me, it's hard for South Carolina to be in the conversation, just because, and this is me, in my opinion, this is just me, you can't lose to Ole Miss at number 12 in the country at the time. You can't lose to Bama, 7th in the country at the time. You lost them in back-to-back weekends.
Right.
And you've also got, I mean, all these teams, I think, have their own egregious misses, egregious losses. South Carolina had the W over Kentucky, obviously, which is what the first stubbing of the toe that Ole Miss had. To me, when you're talking about, I think the head-to-head has to play a part in terms of those 3 teams specifically. I would feel some type of way if I'm Bama or if I'm Ole Miss, if I'm getting jumped by South Carolina, when that's a team that I beat head-to-head. Now, granted, you got to look at the entire body of work, and I think in terms of the entire body of work, Alabama and Ole Miss have better. And to me, I like Ole Miss's body of work the most. But where Alabama is, I think if any of those three teams get in, I think it's Alabama.
Yeah, and I think if we're looking at who is the best team overall on paper, I think it's, you could make an argument for Alabama over Ole Miss, but I think it's Ole Miss.
Bama's got some egregious losses.
Yeah, Bama has some bad losses, but a team that doesn't have egregious losses is South Carolina. Against Clemson, they beat, not egregious losses, great wins against Clemson, A&M, and Missouri, and of course they lost back-to-back against Alabama and Ole Miss. Those are not egregious losses.
Not bad
and
losses.
Even though they did lose back-to-back against those two teams that they're fighting on the bubble, you look at Ole Miss, who have lost to unranked teams, right? And even though they did beat Georgia, you still lost to Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Florida, all of which were unranked. South Carolina lost to ranked teams. Even though it is that head-to-head matchup, I think that doesn't matter as much as it probably used to. Going back to when it was the BCS National Championship, of course, but even when the college football playoffs was smaller. And so I think South Carolina, just based off of their resume, and they have a harder, tougher strength of schedule, I think overall South Carolina should make it in, but it's close. It's close. I mean, let's talk percentages here, Avery.
What you got for me?
Ole Miss have a 3% chance to make it to the college football playoff. South Carolina has a 21% chance, and ESPN agrees with you. Alabama has a 30% chance. In reality, what I think it is going to be, I think it is going to be Alabama, because we do have to factor in brand recognition. In today's college football, that's very important. What's going to get more views?
Eyeballs.
Alabama versus Georgia in the first round, or Georgia versus South Carolina? Alabama, Georgia in the first round. I'm not saying that is a lock, that's going to happen. We still have the SEC championship that Georgia and Texas are going to play in. But, yeah, those eyeballs are going to be on Alabama, even though Nick Saban's not there anymore. That brand recognition is there. But I'm just going to say it again. South Carolina has 3 ranked wins. And that is really what is going to be the deciding factor. 3 ranked losses as well. Whereas Alabama and Ole Miss have much more egregious losses.
Yeah. And we're talking about the hypothetical of one of these 3-loss teams in the SEC getting in. In reality, it might not be any of them.
Right.
You're talking about a Miami that is 10-2, who did have a really just unbelievable. We're talking about egregious losses, unbelievable loss.
Syracuse.
Can't lose to Syracuse having a great year.
Yeah.
They're having a great year for Syracuse's standards, but they still were not a team that you would expect to lose to, especially knowing what was at stake, right?
Right.
And for Miami to lose and now put themselves in a position where they're kind of sitting in between Alabama and South Carolina and Ole Miss, I think they'll be pretty hard pressed. I think they'll be pretty hard pressed for the College Ball Playoff Committee to knock them out.
Miami, ESPN giving them a 24% chance, and then the other team who's playing for the ACC championship, SMU, with a 69% chance. They sit there at 11-1. My biggest gripe with SMU is their strength of schedule. Their RPI is 63rd in the country, which translates to we didn't play anybody. The Ponies didn't play anybody this year. But still, sitting there at 11-1, even if they do lose the ACC championship, they still should get in. And they play Clemson in the ACC championship that are also a slight bubble team as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it's great. It's insanity. I mean, we were talking until we were blue in the face earlier today, putting the show together about all of this. And it's frustrating, I think, most for Ole Miss fans because those losses, especially against Kentucky and against Florida, were just so rough because they were so close.
You knew what the expectation had to be.
And you knew, and also, that it didn't help that also Kentucky was at home because the road losses don't factor as much in.
Sure.
But you know how good this team is, and if you look at all of the stats, Ole Miss are top 5 offensive and defensive when you look at a lot of those metrics, a lot of the very important metrics, and they still are. But you still sit there and you're ahead of a lot of these teams in those metrics that are going to make it in, and then you're sitting here playing in the Citrus Bowl or whatever, It's frustrating.
A lot of those teams Ole Miss is going to pass a lot of those teams just in terms of the smell test, right?
Yeah.
I think on paper, and you watch them play, they look like one of the best teams in the country, and what we've seen so far is that they haven't lived up to that billing simply because they've I keep saying the word, stubbed their toe against teams that are, I wouldn't say they're inferior competition, they're SEC teams, but you can't lose to teams. You can't expect to be in the college ball playoff. You can't bemoan or whine if you don't get it in when you lost to teams that you really weren't expected to or should have lost to. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll find out the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday. As of right now, it looks like Ole Miss will be the team on the outside looking